We are at the halfway point of the URC season. Who is flying high and who is firmly on fraud watch? In this podcast, we are going to rank every single one of the 16 teams. Let's start the show. I am joined by the Rugby B and C. No A, sadly. South African Alan is not with us this week. He's been on his holidays to Cardiff Bay, of all places. So we'll see you again maybe next week, Alan. Shout out to you. But I've got policeman Ben and that Caolan with me. Good evening, gents.
Good evening, Hugh.
Good evening. Happy New Year to you all.
And to our listeners.
Happy New Year, everybody. Ben, is policeman one of those occupations where you're not supposed to say that you do it? It's a bit because my mum was a teacher and she wasn't supposed to have social media accounts and things. It's a bit like saying on a podcast that you're a policeman a bit of a no-no.
It's been said now, isn't it? So no, I mean, actually I watched 1% Club. What's the 1% game? I can't remember the Christmas special.
Club, I think it's called.
Yeah, and there was a person on there who was a police officer that got down at the final round. And he was more than happy to tell millions of viewers that he was a police officer. So, and he corrected him. He goes, constable goes, Inspector, and I was like, oh, hang on. So yeah, that's what happened. So he was happy to tell people. So yeah, if with our slightly less lower audience figures, I'm happy to play along and be happy about
one of these days we will have the same audience as Lee Mack and the 1% Club.
Low audience. We're massive, mate. We're absolutely massive. So speaking of massive, tell you what else is massive.
I said lower. I didn't say low. I said lower. So.
Oh, I see. Well, someone who is absolutely massive is the United Rugby Championship, because over the festive period, he yet again smashed the attendance record, 153,000 round 8, and we're currently on 140,000 for round 9, and round 9 finishes in February. So we'll catch that up then. If we don't break the attendance record, you won't hear anything about it. If we do break it, you will hear something about it. But is it fair to say, gents, that the URC is doing festive rugby pretty damn right these days?
It staggers the fixtures, which I think makes it perfect. Having Boxing Day, having New Year's Day games. I think it's staggering
this year, isn't it?
Yeah,
I liked it. It meant that you weren't all having all the games on at one time. So yeah, I liked it. I think it's really good this time.
And even going what was it? Maybe one game on the 22nd, one game on the 23rd, or something like that. May not have been before Christmas, maybe afterwards. But staggering them across the weekend, as you said, and then either side of the new year having the two Welsh derbies. Which, look, there'll be plenty of people here who would not have spent their New Year's Day watching the Welsh derbies. I was one of them, but I have an excuse. I was working, so I'm allowed.
It was funny seeing on socials, especially on Blue Sky, which is very Leinster heavy, seeing all the Leinster people going. Seeing all the Leinster people going. So, what is a Dragons? Who is this man who is playing for them? That was quite funny.
Yeah, I'm a New Year's resolution. I'm not going to slag Leinster fans as often online until they come at me. So from next week, I can go back at it.
Oh, from the comments when this is uploaded tomorrow, they will have come at you by then. So
for things you say, anyways.
Yeah. So, without talking about the game particularly, Ben, because I'll get into that in a bit, but Glasgow at Hampden Park, a rip-roaring success. What was it in the end, 25,000?
Sounds about right, yeah. I think over 25,000, which is double Scotstoun, and it looked really good. Obviously, they closed the ends off, so everyone was kind of corralled into the centre of both, touchline stands. But yeah, it looked good. Obviously, the result for Edinburgh wasn't great, but I think as a spectacle, I was really happy that they were able to use the venue to a good potential. I think it sounded from what I heard from fans that went that they were really happy with the hospitality there, and it was just a vastly different experience to what they're used to for their other 8 home games of the season. So yeah, I think big thumbs up, and hopefully it'll return and it'll be a fixture for the future, I think.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Right, yeah. So let's get down to the business of the night then, gents. So halfway point of the season, some teams have only played 7 games, some teams have played 9, but nominally round 9 has mostly completed. So we're taking it as the halfway point of the season. So what is traditional when you have a rugby podcast or a sports podcast is that you do a half-term report. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a tier list for all of the teams. Tier list is very popular on YouTube. And rank every single team. Now, there are 4 categories, and to the listeners at home, I have not shown Ben or Caolan the categories. I haven't shown anyone. And I almost forgot to make them. It was when I was sat down for tea, I went, and that's it, to very quickly make them on a free online tool. But here they are. So I shall share the screen now. So YouTube viewers, it's going to look like this on the screen for a long time for a bit. Here it is. So these are the categories. So we've got flying high at the top. For teams that are flying high, we've got on track, we've got meh. Now that did originally say underwhelming, but underwhelming didn't fit in the box, so I've gone for meh instead. And then fraud watch is the bottom tier, which is something that we've spoken about a lot on this podcast.
I'd like to just make an observation. I think Fraud Watch should be above Meh. Meh should be the teams you just simply do not care about. At least Fraud Watch, you have a vested interest. Like, say, I'm not going to give an example. I'm just going to go because they're literally number 1 here in Cardiff. Say you put them in Fraud Watch, that means you care, whereas you mightn't care about the Dragons. I'm just saying.
Look, the whole premise of this podcast is at least one of us cares about everybody. Obviously, we haven't got South African Alan here.
But we care about the South Africans.
But we do care about the South Africans. They're very deeply. Right. So let's make a start. Thinking, shout out to my future self who's going to have to do the timestamps for all this. Let's start with Glasgow, the champions. So, Ben, Glasgow second in the league. A weird loss to Edinburgh, but that was on the back of a very expected win over Edinburgh. Glasgow on track or flying high? I think it's one of those two. Fair to say.
I'm going to say on track.
You can expand. You feel free to expand.
I am. I'm thinking. I'm just because it's hard. The title. Title holders. They're 5 and 3. I would have said flying high if they back-to-backed us over the Christmas period, but because they haven't, I'm going to go on track.
I go flying high just because I think it's
they're on the borderline of those 2 categories, but I'm going to say on track.
I think ultimately, predictors hat on here. I think it's going to be Leinster and Glasgow 1 and 2 come the end of the season.
Yeah,
and I think that's where Glasgow want to be. Like, it is easy to forget they did finish 4th last year. They weren't really in contention for top spot going into the last round or 2, or give or take. So, yeah, I go flying high. And yes, it's a very disappointing loss. But yeah, maybe 2025 is the year where Munster fans finally stand up for Glasgow. Maybe that's what's happening here. I don't know.
There we go. Very surprised.
I think Glasgow are. They haven't dipped since last season, and I think they are showing improvements to their game. They were top this time last season, I'm pretty sure, or pretty close to top. So then he's second, and we probably expect them to finish second. So I kind of feel like they're on track. I think if they were top of the league, I'd say flying high, but there is a bit of a gap to Leinster, and they have dropped a couple of games. So I'm kind of on track personally for Glasgow at the moment. And I'm the person with the mouse. So on track they go.
There we go.
Where do we go next? We need to keep the South African viewers interested, so let's go for a South African team. Let's go for the Bulls. Runners up last year.
Let's just go through it that way. We'll go through the quarterfinalists from last year and then the rest.
What are we saying for the Bulls then?
I'll say this one. I'm gonna go meh. And they have been good, don't get me wrong. But the way you said I think Glasgow are exactly where they were at last season, I don't think the Bulls are. I think they are a mark or 2 worse than they were. And look, they were really good before April last year. The Bulls were probably a lot of people's favorites to win the competition. They were looking really good. It was the 2 losses to Munster at home and Leinster away, although they were in a different order, that seemed to kind of take the momentum out of their sail until the semi-final, and they had that big performance, and ultimately let it down in the final. I just want to see more, because even the injuries are starting to pile up. Obviously, as Alan has spoken about game management of South African teams, I think 9 and 10 is sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe, everyone knows the Gattuso meme. So I'd probably go meh, but high meh, one of the top teams there.
I think Bulls have had a classic case of they had a really good season. Now all their players have been picked for their national side, and now they've dipped. So I've seen that happen 1,000 times, and I think they'll get it together. And I'm not worried about them finishing top 4. But I think they're a bit down on last year. They've had a few disappointing results. Maybe we're being a bit tainted by Europe, because I think before the European break, they'd only lost 1 game, which was against the Scarlets. And But I agree with Meh. I agree, and I think a lot of Bulls fans would say Meh as well. I mean, there's been talk of the start to be rumblings of like, have they reached the ceiling of Jake White, for example? And I think they're not quite fraud watch yet, but I think that's a signifier
Well,
of Meh.
I mean, you have altitude in a home final and you lose on a week's notice. There's a small bit of fraud watch there. But it's important, like these aren't power rankings. We're not saying the Bulls are the ninth best team in the league by putting them at the top of Meh is probably important. It's just to their own standards. I just I just wouldn't have them as high up. And as you said, I think a lot of Bulls fans would agree. Like they should have won the final last year. We should have been talking about them first. Instead we're talking about Glasgow.
You agree, Ben?
Yeah, I agree. I've not actually enjoyed watching them this season as well. And maybe that's just my personal sort of view of how they're playing rugby. But
Apart from Cameron Hanekom, every game I've seen him play this year, he's been really good.
All right then.
I'm going to go for Meh. Not high Meh, just Meh.
High Meh. All right, Leinster then. There's not tons to say about Leinster. I mean,
they have to be flying high.
They have to be flying high, but they're also on track. Like the thing with Leinster is if anything less than what they're doing is kind of like not Meh, but anything less than what they're currently doing is, questions to be asked. But they are literally undefeated this season. They haven't got the perfect points haul. They've flattered to deceive in some rounds, but you get the sense that they're just warming up still, really.
Do you think they could go unbeaten the entire season?
No. They're in South Africa. They're in South Africa just after the Six Nations. And they have Glasgow, but they have Glasgow at home.
Yeah, Glasgow at home.
So I think they'll drop the two South African games. They might drop a game between them and the Glasgow game, but I think they'll go full bore for Glasgow and beat them. You see, the thing is, and I've probably been more critical than others on Leinster, ultimately, Leinster they've brought back their internationals quicker than other Irish provinces. They have, obviously, the budget, the star power, the talent, the coaching, all that. But as you said, they have kind of flattered to deceive. The Connacht game over the Edinburghs, the Munster game was a very well-rounded performance. I don't think Leinster were brilliant, but they were markedly better than Munster on the night. Munster just did not have a team that could fire a shot at that Leinster team that was selected. But even like there's probably an element too of looking at Ireland and how Ireland got in the autumn and just almost tying that into Leinster because you talk about their form or whatever. But even Leinster weren't great against Bristol, they weren't great against Clermont. There's probably, if you would have one fear or one reservation about Leinster season, it's Toulouse's Espoirs are going to La Rochelle and almost getting a result. Well, they got a result, to be fair, and their full strength team have looked unbelievable all year. Whereas that's usually Leinster. So I think that's an intriguing backdrop to Europe, but definitely flying high. But on relative terms, I can see maybe 2 or 3 teams that I would have ahead of them versus those teams' own standards.
Yes, I think that makes sense. I think that definitely makes sense. There's
just a quick segue. Where's Stuart Lancaster going to go? Does he come back into the setup somewhere? Not necessarily Leinster, but no.
He's staying now at this stage. But I think when he leaves Racing, if that's tomorrow or if that's in 10 years, I think the RFU will be the first ones on the phone to him because they loved him as a coach and as someone who he did a lot of work on the ground at Leinster in terms of going to schools and less so clubs, but that's Leinster's prerogative with a lot of schools and underage and all that. And he's very very easy to sell as well. He's big onto the leadership courses and things like that. Which if you're in the right area, like if he goes back to London, he'd clean up for that kind of stuff. But I think the IRFU will offer him a job when he leaves Racing, but I don't think it'll be anytime soon. Kind of, it's that funny one though. It's like we'll get on to Munster. We might skip Munster to avoid doing 2 Irish teams in a row, but he gets linked with the Munster job because of like Andy Goode, but it's like, like, are we going to agree with what Andy Goode said? The guy who called him Lanny, which made me to do Lenny from The Simpsons memes.
Well, I'm
not ashamed of.
I don't know. I think that there is an element of 2 + 2 going on there. But anyway, moving on. Leinster flying high. If we're not doing Munster, then let's do another big team. Let's do Stormers. Stormers kind of got it together over the festive period. They beat Sharks and they beat the Lions as well, didn't they? They beat the Lions. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so they've been.
We were busy, guys. We have other lives outside podcasts.
Let's not beat around the bush. They were pretty shocking for most of the first half of the season, and let's not let recency bias like get to us. Like it's they've been. I predicted it before the season. I think there's a very good chance they don't make the playoffs. Now they've gotten their northern tour out of the way, which is something, and they're picking up results against their South African neighbours, but I don't see them challenging for the title at all, personally.
No, it's to go back to that point. Are they fraud watch or are they meh? Like, do we care enough? Like, they're probably a big team. We do care. Like Cape Town and the Stormers, they're big. I'd lean towards fraud watch, but they have had a fair few injuries this year, and that.
But I think that's part. I think that feeds into fraud watch.
Yeah,
because my newest thing is injuries aren't luck. If you get that level of injuries every single
there's
week,
something going wrong. Yeah, there's something in the infrastructure of the club going wrong.
Yeah,
if you have injuries.
So yeah. I'm going fraud watch as well, because even if I do think that they will have a better second half of the season, we're rating the first half of the season. The first half of the season is fully fraud watch.
Can't do hypotheticals yet, can we?
Exactly. So looking forward to reading your comments, Stormers fans. I know there's a lot of you. There's an awful lot of you.
Please contribute. We'll be willing to engage in a positive manner.
Yeah.
I don't usually engage, to be honest, but Ben and Alan will fight the good fight.
Alan will engage. Yeah. Alan always engages. If you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and giving us a like, or if you're listening on audio formats, please give us a 5-star review and leave us a comment as well. We love reading them. If you if you disagree with things that we say, that's fine as well. The algorithm just sees that there's a comment, not whether it's nice or bad or good or bad.
Or offensive.
Welsh team.
Let's
Scarlets. Let's do Scarlets.
Yeah.
Okay. All right then.
I want to put Scarlets in flying high.
Same, I really do. Definitely.
Really? We're sixth. We're sixth.
But I think their expectations were not that high, and versus someone put up the stats of like versus the same opposition last year, results were not as strong. I think they're.
But at the same time,
I put them ahead of Leinster. They're one of the teams I was thinking of when I said versus their own standards.
Really? So we have had a favourable fixture list.
Scarlets and Cardiff for my two. Yeah.
And we've lost games narrowly. And before the season, we looked at that fixture list and said we need to be winning 5 games. We've only won 4 so far. And that's 5 games in the first block, I should say. Obviously, 1 point defeat to Connacht, which was very disappointing. A very disappointing home defeat to Cardiff. We've played Zebre, we've played Dragons, which helps. We've also played Black Lion in Europe. I know we're not taking into account Europe here. So we have had fixtures on our side, and we played a very heavily rotated Glasgow team away. Came away with a 2-point defeat, which everyone was very happy with. So I've done a poll on the Scarlets podcast socials, which you can find on this channel, and at the moment, exceeded expectations is winning, is by a long way what most people are voting. I'm kind of more on track because I don't want last season to be a false friend. I don't want the fact that we absolutely tanked last season and we're terrible to therefore make people go, oh, well, they're really good this season because they're mid-table. Like, no, I feel like we should be in and around fighting for that 8th spot. We're in 6th, and like I said, we have had favourable fixtures, but that doesn't take into the context of the performances, which have been highly competitive. But I'm outvoted 2-1, so flying high it is. Do you want to do Cardiff as well then? While we're doing it?
I think Cardiff are our number 1 team on this list versus expectations.
So
I'd say so, yeah.
Cardiff have played, I think, all but 2 of their home games for this season already. So again, they've had a favourable fixture list. And a shout out to friend and colleague Harley Worthy, who said before the season at Christmas, Cardiff will be top 4, and they are because those fixtures are there. Some are saying that the league position belies how good Cardiff really are.
I mean,
how have they had 7 home games? Why has that happened? That seems an extraordinary structure, considering we're 9 league games and they played 7 home games.
That might not be exactly true, but they have played most.
But you're
of
right.
them.
It is. I think you're right. I think it's at least 6 from the brief recall of the fixture.
They played Ulster at home. I know that.
Glasgow at home.
Zebre, Glasgow, Ulster, Scarlets, Ospreys, Dragons. So there's 6 already.
There's 6.
Yeah.
I will do the smart thing and look it up on the brilliant URC Match Centre, and you can keep talking there.
Okay.
You know.
So Ben, give us a non-Welsh point of view on Cardiff.
Well, they've been terrible for quite a few years, haven't they? And I think the fact that they're in the top 4, all you can do is win the games that you're scheduled to play,
that's
right?
True.
And if
I don't
they've won
think you should. Yeah, I did. That's actually a good point.
Home games so far.
6 out of 9 home games. That's a good point, actually, because I do get annoyed when people are like, "Well, you've only beaten teams that you're better than." It's like, well, that still counts. So,
that's the most important games to win.
And also, you don't know where that team that you've beaten is going to finish up when the season ends. So you don't know how. We can sort of have a bit of an insight now, but at the end of the season, you go, "Oh, actually, that victory was important because it was the difference of you finishing 8th or 9th because the team that you beat in October were 2 points behind you in 9th, which does happen."
Strength of schedule and differentials are a big thing in other sports. I know differentials
NFL,
is more talked about in soccer,
yeah.
but definitely NFL is the one where you think about it. But like in the URC with the truncated season, well, it's not truncated, but it kind of is. The strength of schedule is massive. Like the fact that Cardiff had Ulster at home versus the Ospreys, who went to Ulster, because we'll talk about the Ospreys later, we'll talk about everyone, means that Cardiff got that win, which they would have been hoping to get. Ospreys came away from Belfast with nothing, which is understandable. So, like, these are kind of important when you look at those games. I think, now, I was high on Cardiff coming into the year. I did not think Tinas de Beer would basically be dropped from the squad, which I don't
That's
seem to
weird
understand.
to me.
I haven't seen a peep out of him for weeks, have we?
I think this is my hot take of the podcast. I think Tinas de Beer this time last year was doing a better job than Callum Sheedy is currently doing.
Yeah, but Callum Sheedy is Welsh, so Welsh qualified. He could turn around and sign for a province right now. He's Irish qualified as well, but they're going well. Yeah, and English qualified, but he's not going to go back.
Is he a bit Ulstery?
Kind of.
Callum Sheedy was to go to a province. Which one would he go to?
I mean, Munster as a backup would suit him as well. But the other thing is he's very lethargic for Munster's system. Do you know? Like, he's not the quickest 10 in the world.
He's not Jack Crowley B, is he?
No. He's more, if Anton, more Ross Byrne, more Leinster. But,
he's not going to Leinster.
He's not going. I'm not saying he's going to Leinster. I'm just,
I can see him at Ulster.
Like for like.
I can see him at Ulster. They were always desperate for a 10. It would be very weird because at this point,
Morgan is doing really well. To be fair, he's really fit.
Aidan Morgan had a pretty good festive period. Morgan, I think, from
he didn't play against Connacht. Jack Murphy started that one and played really well. Son of Richie Murphy. Yeah. Did Morgan play against Munster? He did, I think, but he had to move out of position. But he's like, it's a weird one because he's small but punchy, but doesn't get the credit for being like really, really strong defensively. Like, you don't really run over him. He's a really good tackler. Just needs more time to bed into the Ulster system, I think. But I suppose we might as well just move on to Ulster now because we're talking about Ulster.
All right, okay, we'll do Ulster now. So congratulations, Cardiff. You're officially the best team in the URC as it stands. Ulster then.
Harley,
I tell you what, I watched Ulster Munster and I thought Ulster were absolutely toilet. I thought in that particular game, I thought they were awful.
It was their worst performance in a long, long time.
And I think
the Ospreys game at the start of the year, but
yes, they have. I know. I keep referring to Europe, and I said we weren't going to count it, but I know they've had potentially the hardest possible fixtures in Europe you could have. But I think they rolled over a bit blooming easy in those games.
Well, not against Bordeaux. They gave them 60 minutes. Okay, and not
against Bordeaux. Against Toulouse, I think they
against Toulouse. Yeah, they packed it in for that one, which is business decision.
Yeah, and I thought, because obviously through last season they changed their coach, and I picked Ulster to be kind of the surprise package of the season, and I thought that with Richie Murphy they'd changed the record, but they have gone back to playing very 10-man rugby. They feel like they're playing a game planned from 7 or 8 years ago. To be honest, they feel quite old-fashioned.
That's the concern. as well because they stayed with the same assistant coaches. Now, obviously, it's the buck stops at the top man and all that, and I'm not trying to just move past Richie Murphy or whatever, but they did have the same assistant coaches, but kind of a United Rugby Rewind exclusive because it has not been talked about in podcasts yet. It is basically a done deal. I'm here that Mark Sexton, brother of Johnny, the Connacht attack coach, is going to Ulster. He worked with Richie Murphy at the Ireland under-20s. Apparently, it's a done deal until we know for certain. We don't know for certain, but that's what I heard over the Christmas break. Sexton's style of attack with Connacht wouldn't fill you with a huge amount of excitement because, again, it's not 10-man rugby, it's 12-man rugby. Do you know that kind of way? Like, it's not that more
their
expansive.
attack last season was poor.
It was poor last year, and this year when they got everyone back in, it's like it's actually just the same. They haven't managed to utilize the best of Hansen and Bundy and the likes. But I think with Ulster, ultimately, they have the players. I would be very surprised if Ulster miss out in top 8 from here. I think they're in a very good position, but we shall see on that. I would have them, in terms of the actual question, I'd have them on track because their back end fixtures are so nice. They have they have the South African trip.
Where
done.
are they? Yeah, they have it done yet.
South
Where
African
are
trip
they in the
done.
league currently? They're not top 10.
9th, I think. But their remaining fixtures, and I'll just throw it up here now for you. Of course, now the Wi-Fi decides to slow down. Their remaining fixtures from here are Zebre at home, Benetton away during the Six Nations, Scarlets at home, Dragons away, Stormers at home, Leinster away, Sharks at home, Munster away, Edinburgh away. Realistically, only one of those is, they'll definitely lose. They can win in Thomond on a Friday night. They can win in Edinburgh. They can beat the rest of the teams, the Welsh teams, the South African teams, the Italian teams, especially around Six Nations time. I think they're going to make top 8.
But we're reviewing the first half of the season, not what we think is going to happen in the second.
It says on track. They are on track. Like,
I think it's
the wording.
I think
this
points
would
on the
never happen
board.
with me and Ben doing the wording.
Maybe it's worded to generate discussion, but I think they're on track in terms of points on the board. I think that watching them extremely meh.
Fair.
Ben, fair. What's your take? You're going to have to be the tiebreak here.
I'm going to go with you, Hugh, and say meh. I did watch that game against Connacht, and I wasn't impressed.
They played well. They played well against Connacht, though. Like, defensively, very solid. Lineout stood up for a rotated team. Like,
Yeah.
But I'm just going on.
Sorry, Ulster fans.
Season.
I tried. Sorry to Adam Latham and the boys. I tried.
Yeah, sorry, shout out Adam. We'll do another one of these at the end of the season, and if they make the playoffs comfortably, it's just I was expecting more. I was expecting a bigger evolution for Ulster this season, so maybe that's my own bias, but I think to watch they're quite meh.
Yeah, it's not fun to watch. But I'm sorry, Ulster fans. Would I have them? See, this is the thing. Are we doing this as like 1, 2, 3, 4 then for the 4 groups? If it is,
we can. Yeah.
Do we have Ulster ahead of the Bulls?
That feels weird.
No,
it does feel weird because the Bulls will probably be 3rd when they play their remaining fixtures.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Bulls have kind of been like Leinster. It was like, you've been good. I just expect you to be great. Do you know? Again, but then again, I wanted Glasgow to be flying high, so maybe I'm just way too positive.
Hey, maybe if we put Bulls as low down as possible, AP Cronje will tweet us, and then we'll get loads of engagement. So we'll do that.
You were friends with AP.
He's a great guy, AP. Right, let's do an Italian team. We haven't done an Italian team yet. Let's do Zebre. Loads to talk about Zebre. So Zebre have picked up 2 wins so far.
On track.
And they were very unlucky against Benetton.
To not be Benetton. Very, very unlucky. I was actually the result of the season I've been gutted about.
They
nearly beat
in
the
that
Lions.
awful weather. Yeah. I think Zebre, that was the result I've been most gutted about. I think from a purist perspective, that I really wanted them to beat Benetton just to beat your rivals, and they should have done. And I think it was a real shame.
If you
that
want
they couldn't
someone
pull
to be agreeing with you, Ben, the Zebre game was also the one I was most gutted about, but not the Zebre Benetton game. A very different Zebre game this
You're
season.
referring to probably round 2, I believe, is what you're referring to.
I believe it was round 2. Yeah, but that's a long time ago now. It's in the past, guys. It's last year.
Well, of course, Zebre, as we stand, we're not expecting to be part of the URC next year. It will be a different Italian franchise.
Cardiff, Verona, wherever they decide to put
Yeah.
them. Yeah, who knows?
Cardiff is the favourite, isn't it?
I think I read there's 3 bids on the table, which we said on the podcast. They weren't. It's not like Zebre going bust and Italy are looking staring down the barrel of going to one team. It's the spot in the URC has been put up for sale, and I think I read that there's 3 interested parties.
Who was the other one?
I don't know. I don't know who. Amaretti.
Wasn't Torino?
Northern, I think.
Northeast.
Yeah, they're all in the north. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're on track.
Coming back, I kind of want to put them in flying high because they are unlucky to only be on 2 wins. And
if they'd beaten Benetton, I would have been more inclined to agree with you, because they didn't, and they had that awkward result against the Lions. I think that
put them in on track. And if we need one more team to go into flying high by the time we're done, I feel like it's a toss-up between them and the Lions as to who I move up.
Okay. It doesn't have to be 4 in each. It can be whatever you like.
But it would be more aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, I think Benetton are having. Benetton, I think Zebre are having as. It's sad, really, that kind of their most enjoyable season is probably going to be their last season. So, yeah.
Do you hope that I know Parma's kind of in that slightly central part of Italy, but it depends on where they decide to go in the travelling time, isn't it? I mean, you're going to have some diehards that are still going to hopefully want to go and see them wherever they move to. And
but they're not called Zebre anymore.
It's tricky,
I don't think the Zebre part is the bit you're latching onto. I think it's the Parma part, if I'm being honest.
Well, let's not pretend that there's like 20,000 turning up every week to watch them as well.
There's not. It's 2,500 to 3,000, isn't it? But...
They were a step up from Ironi when they first changed. So hopefully, with a bit of incentives, they will change for the better as well.
Yeah, I kind of want Zebre to be in flying high, but okay, on track then. Right, come on, let's do Munster then. Let's do it.
Yeah, definitely, isn't it? I mean, they're on track insofar as they have, like Ulster, a nice run in, should still make top 8. And given the context of their season of what unfolded, like we couldn't have predicted that at the start of the year, but you have to put them in May. You can't really put them in on track. Surely.
Lost to Zebre and sacked your coach is fraud watch material, in my opinion.
It is, but like at the same time, they just beat Ulster. You can't have them below Ulster then, you know? Like they've beaten Ulster.
Where are they in the table? Where are Munster in the table now?
Played Stormers. 11th, I think, if I'm right.
Top of the table last season.
It's a logjam. Like, do you know what I mean? I just go meh because I think it's kind of like, given what we know ended up happening. If you had said there's going to be a major coaching change by the time you hit Christmas, you'd be like, oh fuck. So
which is exactly what our reaction that Monday morning, wasn't it?
It really was, yeah. Well, actually, was it Monday or Tuesday?
It was early week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I remember seeing it, and we were straight on our chat, weren't we?
It was kind of like, what?
Yeah.
That was a sad morning.
Yeah.
But
I'm still on fraud watch. I've got to be honest.
No.
Well, Ben, what's your take?
I'm not really one for putting teams on fraud watch, but
really.
At the risk of making us an aesthetically pleasing tier maker, I'm going to go with you and say fraud watch.
Fuck yeah.
Yes. So come on, Munster fans in the comments. Let's be having you.
Munster fans in the comments are way more negative than me. Don't you worry. So it's not going to make much difference.
I just think, I know we just bigged up Zebre, but I think losing to Zebre and sacking your coach is like...
Oh, look, losing to Zebre. But then on the flip side, because literally the margins are so tight that if Munster beaten Zebre, they'd be bonus points or points difference off third. Like it's literally that tight between the 6 or 7 spaces, so that kind of says it all too. That's why it's kind of like really hard for like even Munster, Lions, Sharks, Edinburgh, Stormers, Cardiff, Scarlets. Like,
but Munster were top of the league last season.
Yeah, they were, but like the best pundit in Ireland predicted that they would be a worse team this year, and he was right. So That was Bernard Jackman. No,
Oh,
I didn't agree with him
I
at
thought
the
that
time.
was being sarcasm when I was trying to figure out who you
No,
mean.
no, genuinely. He was like, I look at their squad. I think they're going to hit a bit of a dip this year. He was like, not many people believe me, but I just look at it, and he said, I think they will, and he was right. So
rather prescient, wasn't he? But he does tend to get a lot right. I actually sort of really enjoy looking at his views. He's not inflammatory. He's not biased towards any particular province. I think he tends to get the balance right, and he's often
carries the Irish
correct.
rugby media circle at this stage. He is he knows the schools game, he knows the clubs game, he knows the women's game, he knows the men's game, he knows the sevens game, he knows the provinces, he knows the national team.
I've got so much respect for anybody who knows anything about sevens. Shout out David on Scrum of the Earth. I don't have the space in my head for sevens.
I like sevens, but
I like sevens. I love watching
zones.
sevens. It's just I don't have the time in my life to lavish to it.
Yeah. But anyway, here we are with our list.
On another day, I'll tell you my idea for a URC sevens tournament, which I think would be amazing. But another day. Let's do Ospreys next. So Ospreys, similar to Munster, mutual consent into their coach, and
we knew he was going beforehand. So
yeah.
But what I said came true, didn't it? He will leave before the end of the season because it always happens. You always say, "Oh, we've got the end of the season," and there's always there's something somewhere where they go, "Let's just shake hands and walk away now."
Yeah,
and it happened exactly when I thought it would.
Out in Munster.
Yeah, granted, you wouldn't put the dog out in that weather. It was such a bad night, so bit of a caveat. Although apparently that suits them. I don't know.
Ben, what's your take on the
Ospreys or the dog? I just think you're setting yourself up for fraud watch when you decide to announce your coach is going at the end of the season and then they go early. It stinks of fraud. And
I'm going to disagree with you insofar as I can't say Munster and Meh and then say the Ospreys, who went through the exact same thing with lower expectations, are fraud watch. So I kind of have to say Meh, like by my own.
Yeah, but we can program in the Caolan Munster bias in there, and the math.
There's no such thing as like. If you ever read anything, you swear no one is ever biased. It's the weirdest part of fandom. No one ever admits that they're biased, but we're all insanely biased.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's currently wearing a Munster jersey. Right now.
No proof of that. I like Adidas clothing, as do you guys. Adidas, if you want to sponsor us, would be a great way to start 2025.
So yeah, you'll see me at the gym 3 or 4 times a week in Adidas garb. So yeah, feel free to get us involved.
That's the thing. Ospreys jerseys this year have actually been probably Macron's current nicest jerseys, in my opinion. I think Macron have played it incredibly safe this year, but for some reason on the Ospreys they went mad.
We've never done a kit pod. We're gonna have to do that at some stage.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say meh, but knowing you're gonna put them in fraud watch anyway. I'm the positive guy here. You're
the most fraudulent thing for me is the constant claiming that they've got an injury crisis and they don't. It's not true. It's simply not the case. They've got currently Dewi Lake and Adam Beard are out. And that's it. Everyone who said when the team to play Cardiff was announced, I got messages of 3 different people, not all Ospreys fans, saying that team will do a job on Cardiff because man for man, there's a better team. And I do think they've got a good squad. And as well, going back to my Ulster points, where even if they've got points on the board, they're just atrocious to watch. They're just terrible. Did anybody watch Cardiff versus Ospreys?
Afraid not.
Oh, I was working.
Yeah, you didn't miss. You didn't miss much.
I also had to sit through 2 intros this year, and it was Munster, Leinster, and 3. Munster Ulster was actually a weirdly good game for like the last 10 minutes. The rest of it was horseshit. So Munster Ulster, Munster Leinster, and Ulster Connacht. So I don't actually want to watch rugby at the moment. They were bad games.
And the Ospreys are 14th in the league.
Yeah,
fraud watch.
Kind of have to be.
I'm saving that one. Okay, we'll do Dragons.
Meh.
Rare.
Meh.
Again, got rid of the head coach.
Bottom. Sack their coach.
But
they haven't.
I thought
Dragons
it was
ever be fraud watch. Like, I mean that really respectfully, but like to be fraud watch, don't you kind of have to have a little bit more gravitas than
I think it
might
depends.
Finish 14th.
I think it depends how sick of it you are. Like they flick between antipathy and pissed off. So it's like, oh, I just don't care anymore, or no, it's not funny anymore. And I think at the moment they're on the it's not funny anymore side of the spectrum. Listen to the Dragon's Lair pod. They did it. They made a really great point on that pod, which you can also find on this YouTube channel, about how the board at the moment. So the Dragons are currently on track to turn a profit this season, a financial profit, finishing the black, which is no mean feat in rugby. Not many rugby teams anywhere in the world will do that, not even in France. And so the Dragons fans are saying, well, okay, so if we're doing so well financially, why don't you spend a bit more money on the squad and the coaches? Because at the beginning of this season, they brought in Philo Tiatia as the defense coach. And then they said, great, we didn't have a defense coach last season, so we're strengthening the coaching ticket, which needed doing. And then they sacked Flan and promoted Philo Tiatia, which now means that they're back in the same position they were last year, where they've only got one main coach. And their other assistant coaches kind of part-time with Super Rugby Cymru sites. So that's ticks Fraud Watch criteria. They've been competitive in games, and I'm trying to think of another positive. I'm struggling here, lads. What's a positive for the Dragons?
They've had some games. Now they've been a gnarly tough to play against team at times, but they've had some games that were kind of like that. But no, I think it is tough because like they did obviously part ways with Flanagan, who I think, like Toby Booth, like Graham Roundtree, a lot of fans would have been generally on his side from what I could tell. I think a lot of people
I think they were, yeah.
liked him.
I think a lot of people were saying, why now?
Yeah, that too. It did come at a weird time as well. Again, I just can't put them in fraud watch because like we predicted them to be 14th to 16th in the league and they finished. They're in 16th. They might finish 15th. So yeah, I just go meh.
I need another category that says Dragonsy.
Or tanking, like American style.
Yeah, we'll go meh. Got the Dragons above the Ospreys. That'll go down well. What do you agree with that, Ben? Meh?
I think so. I mean, you could argue they're on track, aren't they? Because they're not really doing anything different to last season, and they haven't really shown any sort of ambition beyond finishing above bottom, which is what it's felt like for a little while for them.
They need to change the record. They need to do something. And their recruitment hasn't been great, but the argument is, well, who are they going to attract to sign? But I kind of feel like you can look at examples in other sports. You know, there's no reason why they can't be like the Brighton of the URC or something like that, where they go, all right, you might not win a trophy with us, but you come to us and you'll get signed by someone else for mega bucks or something like that. But that if they're going to do that, that means they need to invest in the coaching because they need to sell like you'll leave us a better player than when you arrive.
Yeah,
and that's kind of not what they're doing at the moment. They're kind of signing people on the come down.
Precipice of a plateau. Yeah,
So typical. they need to have a think. So meh for the Dragons. Let's do Sharks. So Sharks. Here's a question for you. Do the Sharks have the best squad in the URC?
No, they don't have the best squad. They have a very talented top layer, but they don't have the best squad.
I'd agree with that. I think Leinster still have a far better squad than Sharks. I think Glasgow probably do too.
Really?
Yeah.
I think Glasgow are well coached. I don't think that's the best squad in the league.
I think Glasgow are the best coached team in the URC.
Yeah, maybe, but I think just been so impressed with Glasgow's backline this season.
Yeah, they're well drilled. Nigel Caolan is there actually, and he is someone that the RFU next time his contract is up for renewal.
Glasgow have got a great track record with coaches. The last few coaches, Franco Smith, Gregor Townsend, Danny Wilson, and Dave Rennie.
Yeah.
Danny Wilson was shocking.
But he's a well thought of coach.
Yeah.
Look at that Leinster game. Look at that Leinster game. Was it 76-14 or whatever it was?
You don't concede 76 points just because of the coach. You know?
That's true. and he won a Challenge Cup with Cardiff.
Yeah.
He is
So-
kind of like making tracks back in the Premiership as well, I suppose. So yeah,
Yeah.
Well, he's
maybe I'm
head
being
coach of Quins at the moment.
Quins now. Yeah, yeah.
This is,
He was
losing
going to shoot
F8.
us for bringing up Quins.
Yeah. Right. Come on, Sharks though. So, people who have gone to the timestamp for the Sharks are now pissed off because we're not actually talking about them. So,
On track?
at times we have very much called Sharks fraud watch. They had a shocking
Yeah.
start to the season. Shocking first few rounds on tour in
Really
the north.
steadied it though. Like really, really steadied the ship. I think I have the form guide here. If you'll just give me 2 moments. I'm
They
not
won
going
the
to
last
share
4
my screen
games?
on YouTube.
Yeah, they lost to the Stormers.
Right. Oh yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah.
Just give me 2 minutes and I get this up. They did start like really, really poor, but I think it's actually since that Munster game with Anton in Durban that I think they've kind of kicked on since there. I just have it here now. I'm running too many things at once. So that Lions game was postponed. They won 4 straight. They beat Glasgow, Munster, Stormers, and Bulls before eventually losing to the Stormers again. And like they've Cardiff, Bulls, Sharks. Sorry, they don't have Sharks because they are the Sharks. I made a mistake on that one. They have the Lions to come very soon. They actually have the 2 Lions games in pretty quick succession. I think they're on track, but they do have like a couple of iffy fixtures on the run-in. I mentioned that Ulster game in Ravenhill. The Sharks, their big issue has just been they haven't travelled well over the last couple of years.
Yeah. The like I said, there's 2 teams. There's the Durban Sharks and there's the not in Durban Sharks. And the not in Durban Sharks are very
touring
bad.
Sharks
and the rest.
Sia Khaleesi is playing some of the best rugby I've ever seen him play. He's on fire at the moment.
He's been really good. So
And
they're on track, yeah.
Are they on track? Where are they in the league?
Jesus, I can't. Right, I'll have a look here. I should really just have 2 screens open. They are 5th.
Are they 7th?
They're 5th.
Yeah,
that's all right.
If they win their game in hand, they will. Well, with the bonus point, they would move ahead of Cardiff. So they could be 4th when all the games.
If they can get a home semi-final, all bets are off because they've got the squad to do whatever they want, and they will rock up.
But
all right, I'll go
another quarterfinal exit.
But I don't know, Ben. We have at times said, would it be fair to say that if the Sharks get to the semi-finals of the URC, it will be in spite of their coach, who at times everybody has said should be sacked?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Do you think it's because of the seniority of the box they have? They kind of coach themselves, though. Is that what you're suggesting? That
I do get the sense watching them that sometimes they go onto the pitch and they go, "What are we going to do?"
To that.
Like, they do kind of go like,
even when they win games.
It's Finn Russell in 2019 against England when he said to Gregor, "We're not going to play that way," and then look what happens. And, nearly pulled the win out of the bag after being 31-0 down. But maybe there's some similar attitude going on there with Eben and Sia and the rest of them. But yeah,
Evan's going, "I am the coach now." All right.
I don't think anyone would kind of like try and dispute that with him, would they? For lots of reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the one that I want to hear people's views in the comments then, because we've gone on track for Sharks, and I'm really not sure. But I don't think they're meh. They're either on track or fraud watch.
Let's really get the debate going by going straight into another South African team on the Lions, because I think
I love the Lions.
Bear with me. The Lions are in 12th, but I think you could put them in flying high because they win one of those games in hand. They're top 6. Do you know, like that's what I mean? Like it's such a logjam. I wouldn't have them ahead of Leinster now that I look at it, and potentially swap with Zebre, as I said, in a late trade. But if they win one of their 2 games in hand, which are one of them is against the Sharks, and the other one is against the Bulls, if I'm right. Yeah, the Bulls.
They don't tend to win derbies.
They don't tend to win derbies, but if they do, that could be 5th in the table, 6th in the table. Like
I just love watching them so much.
Yeah,
they had a cracking start to the season as well. It's mad that they're in 12th because they were top for a bit. They were unbeaten after 5 games.
Yeah, and then they fell off massively. They were unbeaten after 5 games, then lost to Leinster away, Munster away, Stormers, obviously in South Africa, and then they haven't played since round 8. So And then they have Bulls in February. They got the Bulls in January. They got the Sharks game to be played over the Six Nations break. Stormers and Sharks. So they could actually, it's also possible they fall more and then rise up again. That's also very possible because, as you said, they don't do very well in derbies. But as of right now, I think they should be pretty happy.
I do want to put them in flying high because I like them.
Yeah. And losing 2 games, like they lost 3 games all season. 2 in Ireland and 1 in South Africa. If that was any other team, we'd probably be like, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, if the Scarlets did that, I'd be like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. And like pretty similar budgets. Lions are always losing players. So I think.
What do you think Alan would say?
That's what I was just thinking. I can't see Alan putting him in flying high.
I could see him going anywhere from fraud watch to flying high, to be honest. Because I think you can make a case that, well, they've fallen down the table, which is true. You could say meh, because to use the point you made earlier, Hugh, well, who have they beaten? And they've beaten Ulster at home, Edinburgh at home, Dragons and Zebre. So that's a very fair point you could make as well. You could say on track because they should move into playoff contention. But I'm gonna go flying high.
Ben.
Yeah, agreed. I think just that dismantlement of our side earlier in the season when they battered us, I think.
Oh yeah.
Shows
what was it?
Shows like
60 50 something at half time.
48 nil or 47. It was something. It was 40 something. It was the highest ever deficit at half time in the entire URC, and I think that might have been including Pro 14 and Pro 12. Less said about that, the better. Let's move on.
Granted, rugby has only become this like properly high scoring in the last 5 years, but 10
right,
years even.
Let's do Connacht now because I don't want Connacht to be the last team.
Connacht are
meh.
Yeah.
So,
I think we're going to be able to do 4-4-4-4 here. If I think we're all.
Are we?
Well, let's
think so.
spoil this. Okay, so Connacht then.
They haven't.
Where are they in the league? They're what? But they're
2
not.
seconds. Give me a heads up next time. They're 13th.
I'm guessing 13th. Yeah.
How many games they won? 3.
They've won 3 games. Their 3 wins. They're 0 from 5 in interpros. Which, okay, fair enough. Number 1.
That's got meh written all over it.
That's got meh written all over. But yes, like losing at Ireland is not a bad thing. The 3 teams they've beaten was the Sharks, who, if you remember, absolutely capitulated in the second half. They just didn't show up. They beat the Scarlets by a point, and they beat the Dragons. And sorry, but like the Dragons have not been great, as we've said. Their results, I think, against teams that you can kind of take significance against. Munster and Stormers gave them a good game, to be fair. Leinster up in Belfast gave them a good game. Both the Leinster games, they gave them a bit of a game. But that Bulls game and even the Ulster game at home, actually, just it feels like their season is kind of coming down a small bit at the moment, which is like not a great timing to do it because they've got Glasgow in a couple of weeks' time. They have Glasgow, Cardiff, Benetton, Ospreys, Munster. Now, Munster games in Castlebar, we'll talk about that later. And then they've got their South African tour. So I think Connacht, I'm safe to put in May. I would have them ahead of the Dragons. That's the only thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oop, that didn't work. Yeah, I certainly when I tune into TV and see their half-built stadium, I think meh, but that's not their fault. They're redeveloping the stadium. Unfortunately it happens when your stadium's not finished. It just
Leinster could be playing in a half-built stadium as well, but they have the Aviva Stadium down the road. So
Yeah, neutral venues you go and
play. Who's playing in Castlebar in a couple of weeks' time? Sorry,
Connacht and Mayo. Or Connacht and Munster.
Playing at Castlebar, which is in County Mayo, which is I think that's going to be pretty good. I think because we've talked about this before about especially the Irish provinces going elsewhere. I mean, we know that Munster can go to Musgrave Park and Cork can play, but Ulster can't really move out of Belfast to get that. It's probably nowhere big enough to.
Ulster could, but the grounds.
Newry or Lisbon.
Well, they could go to Cavan. They could go to Kingspan Breffni Park in Cavan, but Ulster's big thing is kind of like Leinster. If you move games, you're going to lose an awful lot of fans because the vast majority of their fans are, around Belfast or close to Belfast, kind of like with Leinster. But yeah, no, Connacht, I'm pretty safe to put in meh. I think we're going to disagree on Edinburgh, but I think we're all going to agree on Benetton.
We do Edinburgh last. Benetton.
Okay, fraud watch.
So Benetton for me,
ultimate fraud watch.
They've had hard fixtures. If you look at their fixture list, because they've had the Zebre back to the back, which is padded their points tally. But they've had hard fixtures. If you look who they've actually played, apart from the Scarlets, they've had hard games. They've played the Bulls.
Glasgow, Leinster, Bulls, and Edinburgh was their 4 losses. So,
and that would have been Edinburgh away, which we'll get onto in a minute.
That was a windy day.
Oh, that was that weird 39 points
it was
to 30-11 tee.
We were up to zip, and then they came back within a try, then we scored a try, then they got another try, then we scored a try and won by, I think, 7 tries to 5 in the end. It was one of those very, very strange games where it was one direction in the first half and then one direction in the second half.
So, Caolan, what's your argument for Fraud Watch?
They just have not been great from day one. There was very high expectations on Benetton this year that they push on, and obviously now in hindsight, drawing with the Scarlets is not that bad of a result. It's just the fact that it happened at home as opposed to maybe, in Parky Scarlets. The Glasgow and Leinster games, I remember, were just bad performances. Obviously, the Edinburgh game you touched on there, it was a real windy day.
They got
whatever
posed at home by Leinster as well.
Yeah,
they got 35-5, I think, wasn't it? Off the top of my head.
Yeah, and the Glasgow result was fairly one-sided as well. And look, they beat the Sharks, fair enough, but the Sharks the first couple of rounds were poor, as we said. Dragons, Zebre. So, do we give them the benefit of the doubt? I don't think we do, because we know that this is the point of the season where usually Benetton have peaked, and then they hit the Six Nations and it starts to kind of fall apart a small bit.
Who have they got during
entire
the Six Nations?
They have some tough games. Well, maybe not necessarily the toughest games, but ones that are going to be tricky for Six Nations period. So the week before the Six Nations, they've Ospreys away. That's going to be tricky. Then they've Ulster at home in the middle of the Six Nations, Connacht away on the 1st of March, and Benetton at home, Edinburgh at home on the 22nd of March. You could be looking at 0 from 4 there, to be honest.
No, it'll be Edinburgh. But
I don't know. The week after the Six Nations?
When you say they've peaked, I think there's something in that they've just played Zebre back-to-back, which... And
historically, they usually have their best rugby played.
And given the fact that Zebre very nearly won one of those games, should have won one of those games and were well in the second one, and the supposed disparity that's supposed to exist between Benetton and Zebre, that does kind of sway to more towards Forward Watch. I'm more on meh, because I think the fixtures have been hard. However, that doesn't take into account they really didn't rock up in pretty much any of those fixtures.
I think that would be Fraud Watch.
What does the Scott Talia correspondent think?
Fraud Watch because of where they finished last season and how promising they looked at that point last season. I think they've not kicked on at all.
Kind of like Leinster.
I think they've regressed a
your
bit.
perception of Benetton is shaped by your perception of the national team. And Italy have also not been great with a lot of Benetton players. So we're going to look at them less favourably. I think it's only fair to have them ahead of the Ospreys. And then the other 3, I think you could interchange that depending on which way the wind is blowing. But yeah, sorry, Ospreys.
I think Munster have been better than the Stormers.
Probably have. Munster have had tough fixtures. Like the Stormers have
at times have just been brain explosion. I've had very strong opinions on the Stormers at times. Yeah. So okay,
they should have beaten Glasgow if I remember, down in Stellenbosch. So.
No, Glasgow were clearly the better team for me.
Oh no, they're the better team, but it's a home game.
Oh, I like the Stormers. I'll keep them above Benetton. Right, Edinburgh then. So go on then, Ben. Your team.
Fraud Watch. And there's 2 reasons why. Away, definitely Fraud Watch. Home, on track, but I think the Fraud Watch of the away form outweighs the on track at home, and there's 2 reasons why. I don't understand why we can't play like we do at home away. It just baffles me. There's 2 performances in particular that stick out. The Lions game I've already mentioned. The Ospreys game was also shocking. The only game where if we'd won, I'd be more inclined to go on track is the first game of the season at home to Leinster. We were very close to, pulling out a result. I know it was a losing bonus point game, which was 1 point better than the season before, but I still think Fraud Watch. I think I look at that wealth of talent, and I've seen the away games where Hampden Park away to Glasgow, Darcy Graham and Duhan barely touched the ball that game, and I do not understand why. I don't know what that set was for that game, and we relied on Bowen Venter coming on and scoring 2 sort of routine tries under the post. I had this conversation on the day, I really felt like if we'd been nilled, I would have been actually quite happy with that, because I think the fact we got some points in that game flattered us. We were awful. We were dreadful. We were uninspired. They just looked like there was no care in the world. And I don't know, Sean Everett has this deadpan delivery with any conversation. If he's feeling 10 out of 10, you'll get the same reaction to him if he's feeling 0 out of 10. He just has this sort of one-tone monosyllabic delivery. Whenever the camera pans to him, irrespective of the score, he has this like dreary look on his face. He does not look interested. Whether that's just the way he is, fair enough. But you've got to look a bit more interested in what your side is doing. And there's been too many games this season where he hasn't had the nous to try and change it. And that's where we sit with fraud drops, because we've got probably one of the, you look at the players in our squad, it's one of the more talented squads I think we've had in a long time. I don't think there's any huge weaknesses there. Centre pairing, maybe, but we've got two of the best wingers in Europe, I think, in Duhan and Darcy. We've got, good front row, fairly good front row.
Is Buffelli still on your books?
Yeah, he is, but he's had a back injury. And that's the other thing. And again, I don't want to go on blame injury routes, but we seem to always have players injured. And I'm not saying that's the reason for it, but is there something going on behind the scenes? Buffelli keeps getting injured. Does he get brought back too soon? Harry Patterson suffered some really bizarre injury over the summer, recovered from that, and then got another injury. And he's not played since that Scotland game when Kyle Steyn had to go off for the birth of his child, I think the night before or whatever it was. And I don't think he's played a minute since. And he looks like he's someone that he needs to play, because when you're injured, when you're young, you're losing a lot of potential there because you're out of the game. You can't do anything. Matt Scott has been consigned to the dustbin. I don't know what's going on with that, because he looked to be.
We haven't even talked about the Ben Healy saga.
Yeah, Ben Healy also. There was one other point I was going to make. Until the Glasgow game at home, Hamish Watson hadn't played a minute in Edinburgh shirt since October. I don't understand that. I'm really confused, because him, Luke Crosby, and Ben Muncaster won us that game. I know Pierre Schumann had that little kick through, which was completely bizarre and definitely wasn't planned and wasn't part of the strategy to obviously get us back ahead that day. But if it wasn't for the back three of the pack, we wouldn't have come out of that game with anything. And I know Watson came on as a bit of an opportunistic moment, because Richie suffered a head knock and didn't look like he was going to recover from it. But for him to be out the team for 2.5 months just seemed to be bizarre. And I just have this concern that as long as Sean Everett is there, we're never going to. 8 is probably the best I can hope for, and then we'll just get battered over whoever finishes top, whether it's Glasgow, Leinster, or the Bulls. I think that's kind of how I see it at the moment. I just see it as an unnecessary round where we're going to get beaten because we can't win away. And until I see some kind of structure away from home, whether it's Zebre that we beat away, fine, but we need to do more than that, because we're better than that. And I think the head coach is the primary reason for that. And I just see a lack of motivation, because as soon as they go to Scotland camp, those Edinburgh players look like they want to play again. We saw it during the autumn tests. A bit slow in the first game because they'd obviously, had 4 or 5 weeks in Edinburgh block and over the summer as well with pre-season. But you saw it by the second and third game. Darcy was playing with a smile on his face again, and I think that says it all, really.
The next couple of weeks are going to define their season in a lot of ways. They have Scarlets, Zebre, and Munster as their 3 games in the Six Nations period.
Yeah.
And you have to feel like need to get a win over the Scarlets. I don't know if that's home or away.
It's home for us. We
beat you at home last season. Yeah.
Any win would be important for Edinburgh. Have to get 5 points off Zebre, and they're coming to Ireland, where Edinburgh typically don't win a lot of games in Ireland. Now, one of their last wins in Ireland was actually in Cork, coincidentally. I think if they get 2 wins out of 3 there, I think you'd safely say meh. But I do come around to what you're saying about being on fraud watch. Not the worst team in the league, because I don't believe that this Edinburgh squad is as deep. I think there's some name value, but I don't think it's as good of a squad as, say, Glasgow, for instance, Benetton, of course, who are in that same conference. But I was leaning towards on track until I heard you speak, Ben, and go through the games. And yeah, I think fraud watch.
Yeah, my point on Edinburgh is the good results draw attention to the bad results. So it very much like the Lions game. I think you won the next game after the Lions game, and it's like, well, what was that about?
Yeah, because we lost our first 3. Yeah.
And he was like, well, what was that about then? And the 1872 Cup is a great example. It's like, we beat Glasgow, we're awesome. Like, well, great, but we all saw the week before. You can't blame travel for that.
And then lost to Ospreys 2 weeks later.
Yeah, and
The Ospreys game was the worst game of the season. I think that was a game that was just utterly just uninspiring and dull and just weak.
Yeah. So
do we want to talk about Ben Healy and just have? I don't know what's going on because we obviously
I think we've discussed it a few times. To be fair,
just quickly recap.
Strange. Well, he joins from Munster last year after Munster won the URC. Joins from
almost
Munster,
every minute.
Plays almost every minute, like all bar 5 minutes last season.
20 minutes, I think. And top point scorer in the league, I think.
Yeah,
top of my head, possibly.
Yeah. And then Ross
Thompson comes in.
And Thompson, to be fair, Thompson hasn't been like the source of Edinburgh's problems or anything. But he also hasn't been like that far ahead of Ben Healy. The fact that Ben Healy has been exercised to the coal mines and so on.
Well, the thing is, Sean Everett hung him out to dry well and truly after the Lions game, didn't he? I think off the top of my head. And
which
that
was a weird game to do it in.
It's bad leadership and also that day it was missed tackles that was the key problem. It wasn't Ben Healy's game management. It was poor defense. And I think even those games, I know I rave about Darcy Graham, a bit of a fanboy crush on him, but he was terrible that game as well. He gave up for a couple of tries. Wes Houston the same. I think Wes Houston's had a pretty good season at 15. Not his usual position. I think he's kind of flown around the wings and fullback over the last couple of seasons. Seems to be, I think he's probably, if I was going to pick any player that's done well this season, him and Ben Muncaster probably exceeded expectations. I think everyone else has been par or below. I think Darcy's been okay, but then I kind of compare how he plays for Scotland. Same with Doohan. I think everyone else has been par or below apart from Ben Muncaster and Wes Houston. I think everyone else has still got work to do to turn that side into a genuine top 8 contender, which they should be looking at their paper, looking at them names on paper. But Sean Everett, he's a bad leader. It's as simple as that. You don't come out and hang your player out to dry like that, especially when it wasn't justified. There's a lot of interest in media between leg 1 and leg 2 of the 1872 Cup, and I think, if I'm being fair, I think Everett would have walked if we lost the return game. I think he would have been done. I think SIU would have been like, we can't have that, and he would have gone because there's a bit of time there. There's a couple of weeks to get someone in because we've got Van away next weekend in European Challenge Cup, and you can kind of just throw a team together and go out to Brittany. I don't think there's a lot riding on that game because then we've got a return home game against Black Lion, and if we win that, we're through to the round 16 anyway, I would suspect. Yeah. So I think if there was an opportunistic moment for him to go, it would have been that, but I think it was contingent on us losing to Glasgow in the second leg. The fact that we won narrowly, it just papers over the cracks. I think that's probably how our season's been. It's like we'll lose enough games to there be questions, and then we'll win a game and they'll be like the questions are just sort of, it's just delay decision. I think he'll go at the end of the season if he's going to go now. I don't think you get rid of him between January and April time, but I think he'll go. I think there needs to be a real discussion at SIU board level about who is actually here that could take Edinburgh forward, because it's been so many false starts. Richard Cockrell looked like he was going to be quite good. I thought I was quite happy with him. Then it all fell apart. I don't think the players really liked his management style. Mike Blair comes in, really like Mike Blair, scrum half, had lots of caps of Scotland, kind of captain material. Him and Rory Lawson kind of switched around none, during that sort of noughties period after Gary Armstrong before Greg Laidlaw. And then he leaves because he realises the head coach isn't for him and he wants to go into a specialist role, which is fair enough. And it's quite humble and quite admirable to do something like that if you realise you're not up to it. But Sean Everett is the opposite. I think there's an arrogance there with him that isn't actually justified. And he hasn't got any kudos or gravitas or honours behind him to kind of justify his attitude towards, his sort of belief in himself. The only person that seems to believe in it is him. I don't think anyone else believes in him.
One of my favourite moments from any interviews, you remember that Ryan Wilson, Doohan van der Merwe interview? Ryan Wilson asked him, why do you like Sean Everett, something like that. And Doohan van der Merwe thinks and he goes, I asked him for an extra week off and he gave it to me. And I think that
we talked about this last summer, didn't we?
I think that says quite a lot about both people, to be honest. So I think Edinburgh fans are the most vocal that I see online about wanting their coach out. And I think the only thing that's more fraudulent than sacking your coach is not sacking your coach and everybody else wants him gone. So I think that's fraud watch. But we're in fraud watch.
It's lack of replacement. I'd say top number one fraud watch.
Well, it was in reverse order.
As in, reverse order. They are what they should.
So the most disappointing team of the season, you're saying?
From an objective and subjective, which is quite hard to say because I'm a fan, but also I like watching rugby.
I think a fan being this negative kind of tells the story.
I'd like to think I'm fairly certain. I don't think I just throw my toys out the pram without good reason. And I think I said this at the start of the season. If
You're not the only one as well. So.
I know, and I've seen some pretty reputed journalists in the Scotsman and the Herald. Jamie Lars said a few things as well. I've got a lot of time with Jamie Lars. He's he's a brilliant commentator. He's actually a really good analyst as well, and he's picked up a few things over the Christmas break. Is it Mark Palmer that writes the Herald or the Scotsman? I think I shared the article with you in between the games. He said something really, really quite sort of astute about the situation. So I think if you're seeing sort of the leading sports journalists in the broadsheets and the tabloids with some sort of rugby insight saying the same thing and feeling the same thing as I am, then I don't think it's unjustified.
Yeah,
I don't want us to be in this position. It's not a position that I enjoy. So I guess that's kind of
running down the tier list. Then we've got flying high Cardiff Scarlets, which is weird. Leinster Lions, which is weird, but I'm doubling down on it. On track is Glasgow Zebre and Sharks. Meh is Ulster Bulls, Connacht and Dragons, and then Fraud Watch is the most populated category with Munster, Stormers, Benetton, Ospreys, and Edinburgh. Well done, everybody. I think that was insightful, valuable, and highbrow rugby content. So, if you are enjoying the show so far, and you're still with us, and you haven't subscribed yet, have a word with yourself. But now we are going to just have a very quick look ahead to the European Cup. So we're not going to go into tons of detail about it as usual, but we will do some predictions. So it starts.
Caolan also hates it, so he doesn't want to talk too much about it. He's like, another couple of weeks of this. Oh god!
It's not that. It's more just the fact that, oh yay, this again.
This is your ultimate meh weekends, isn't it? The next two coming up.
And I don't think bar Leinster Charlotte this weekend. Oh, Glasgow Racing isn't even a great game.
Glasgow have got the first game is Glasgow Racing. Glasgow have got to absolutely batter Racing.
The Racing team without Owen Farrell does not look scary anymore. And it's not just him, but I think Glasgow will get a bonus point win here.
Yeah.
Gloucester Scarlets is interesting, isn't it?
Gloucester, tune into the Scarlets podcast when it's out on probably Tuesday. The styles make fights, and Gloucester don't play like any URC team. So my bit that I'm going to say is, in the URC, everyone in the URC, maybe with the exception of the Lions, play a style of rugby that you would see at test level. It's like everyone's trying to play good rugby. In the Prem, you get teams who are just like, salad to that. Let's all just jouer. And Gloucester are very like that.
And do you know what? As well as that, I think the funny thing is, the English teams who typically play the most like international teams are always the best English teams come to the end of the season. Northampton and Bath last year, Saracens their pomp, Exeter their pomp, Wasps in their pomp, to a lesser degree, but like any team with Willie LaRue playing fullback is playing a brand of attacking rugby that is very international because he has that je ne sais quoi about him. And I think that's the funny thing about the English. But definitely Gloucester are, what are we going to do? Fuck it, Thomas Williams is going to ball for us. So who's going really well, and is definitely, when we get onto it, definitely an outsider shout for the Lions because 9 is not very deep at the moment.
Definitely. Oh no, I definitely think he tours. But on this game, it's styles make fights, and like I said, the Gloucester aren't like any team that the Scarlets will have faced yet, and it will either be it's comfortable for the Scarlets and Gloucester just can't hack us because of the way that we play, or Scarlets are chasing shadows because they, like I said, we're not used to playing a team that will just play wrong rugby and take risks that you're not supposed to take and throw passes that you're not supposed to throw and things like that. So it's an interesting game. I'm going to be there in person and I'm looking forward to it.
Are you going across the Severn? Are you? That'd be pretty cool.
I'm an hour away from Gloucester. I'm north of Gloucester.
Are you? Oh, okay. Interesting. How much is a ticket? 50 quid?
No,
it's a rip-off.
It's quite cheap actually. Yeah, it's not too bad.
The Edinburgh game, it wasn't cheap. Or maybe I'm looking at something else.
I want to say 22 quid. It wasn't a lot. I think it definitely wasn't more than 40. Anyway, Exeter.
Here's the sit forward moment of the game.
Yeah. Okay, right. So Sharks versus Toulouse. And as was broken earlier in the week, Toulouse are sending the big boys down to Durban. Anton Dupont and Roman Ntamak and Thomas Ramos are currently putting on their sweatpants to don a plane, probably in first class, and fly there. Actually, they probably chartered a private jet. Because French teams do that.
Kinghorn will be going as well because he didn't play yesterday, did he? So
yep, Kinghorn's going. You name them, they're going.
But it's the Sharks in Durban, the Durban box Sharks.
It's the Durban Sharks. So the Sharks do have a few injuries. I suspect one or two of them may be magically healed for this game. And I'm looking forward to it. It's game of the round for me.
I think you're right. Now knowing that who Toulouse are sending, yes, definitely.
History says Toulouse. If the Sharks injury list doesn't magically clear up, it's Toulouse. But Toulouse also have not had to play a meaningful game in South Africa. I don't think they've drawn a South African team in the last 2 years.
No, I don't think. I think this is Toulouse's first ever trip to South Africa.
So it's really interesting to see how they manage. I think this has banana skin for Toulouse written all over it. I won't lie. I had Sharks winning this when I went through game by game when the brilliant Keenan Willor did his yearly predictor, and I had Sharks win this. So I'll stick with that.
One way or another, the discourse during and after this game is going to be heated. Because either Anton Dupont is going to have humiliated Grant Williams or Jaden Hendrickson, or the other way around. And
even if it's a 1-point game, it'll be humiliation. And
we will be there. We will be there. Leicester versus Ulster then.
Leicester.
Wow, that's a meh fixture if ever I saw it. Leicester, we were going Leicester?
Leicester, yeah, I think so.
Munster versus Saracens, that's a bit more like it. That's a bit more spice.
That's European heritage there, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Five titles between them, and 7 finals between them. I'd go. Look, Munster are heavily reliant on injuries clearing up. O'Mahony, Murray could be back this week, but like Nankerville probably won't. Clyde probably won't. Obviously, Casey's out. Abrahams is out. The Saracens I seen, and I watched them this weekend, knowing they're playing Munster. They have the power. They have the set piece. That could be just enough. Do you know what I mean? Like they have a very, very good set piece, and they've got a very big pack. Their bench wouldn't say a lot. Their backline wouldn't say a lot. I don't think their halfbacks obviously their halfbacks aren't what they were.
Saracens halfbacks.
Fergus Burke +1. Van Zale, maybe? I'm not sure.
They had Tim Schweel for a little while during the season. He was at Edinburgh randomly last season. He went for a couple of games during the autumn test, but he's gone. It was only like a short-term contract, but that was a strange one. But he did all right, I think, actually.
Never get bet against Munster at home in the European Cup was the way until the Graham Rowntree era, where they lost twice and drew 1. But I have a weird feeling that Saracens are going to come to town and kind of shock people over here, insofar as I think a lot of people have been writing Saracens as, condolences in recent weeks. But I feel like I still think they're a good team. I think they're a better team than what Munster be able to field. They should be favourites for this.
Yeah, I think Saracens might be able to sneak this one. Castor Bulls will send a B team to this, won't they?
They could win it, but
routine enough Castor victory for me. Stormers versus Sale.
This is mid. This is meh for me. Sale, I can't watch Sale Sharks games, and the Stormers have got a shit ton of injuries and don't really care about Europe too much. So
Sale, I watched Gloucester versus Sale most of the second half. Sale were turbo garbage. They were awful. So that's that.
We'll go Stormers because they're URC team.
Yeah, Perpignan, Cardiff. Perpignan currently in a survival scrap in the top 14.
With Van, aren't they? Yeah.
Helps Cardiff.
If half a Connacht team can win in Perpignan, then a Cardiff team can,
Yeah, and Cardiff love a bit of Challenge Cup. They love a bit of Challenge Cup. Connacht, Leon. Leon also in a relegation scrap. I think they beat Perpignan or Po weekend just gone. I think Perpignan.
Two teams who love a Challenge Cup run as well.
Leon won it, didn't they? 2 seasons in Marseille when I was there.
Yeah, Leon's squad is good. Is better than their league position suggests, and they're actually unbeaten in 3 in France. It's just that the 2 before the win this weekend were draws. They had back-to-back draws. One against Toulouse and the other against Racing. So they were wrestling away, they drew.
Yeah, I actually got the end of that one now. Do you remind me? I go Connacht on this one, but only just because there's a better chance of Leon sending half a team than anything else.
Montpellier Lions, I think Montpellier are going to win that. Annoyingly, we don't like to say nice things about them, but they are quite good at the moment.
Yes, correct.
Ospreys, Newcastle Falcons. What a time to be alive, ladies and gentlemen.
Ospreys.
A very, very routine
drab versus drab.
28-6 win for the Ospreys there, I think. I don't see Newcastle giving them any bother whatsoever. Edinburgh go to Vaughan. Vaughan look like they're going to go straight back down in the top 14. So Edinburgh fans, if you're umming and ahhing, I'd say make the trip.
I would like to go to Vaughan because it's just to get to go to Brittany, but it's the time of year. I don't really want to go in the second week of January. I think the interesting thing, and I did mention before Christmas, is that we are playing two teams in Challenge Cup that we've never played before because obviously Vaughan are their first foray into European rugby after being in the top 14 for the first time in their history, I think. Blackline, obviously, an nation team like the Cheetahs. If there's going to be a away game that we win beyond Zebre, this will be the game that we win away, I think. Again, it depends on the squad we send over, but I think it's a game we do need to win. Just to kind of secure passage through to the round of 16 and hopefully get a home tie. So yeah, I'd expect to win there. I think the thing is with Vaughan, they've won 3 games, haven't they, this season?
They're playing right now. I'm going to go and watch.
Yeah, they are. They're at home to
Claremont.
Yeah. And be interesting to see how they get on with that. But yeah,
if Edinburgh are going to win an away game this season, it's that one.
Yeah.
And then Blackline aren't really URC against Bayonne.
Let's hope they win.
I can see Blackline picking up a W there. That'd be exciting. Then on to Sunday's fixtures. Benetton away in Bristol. Bristol look like the wheels are coming off at the moment. They've been
they'll win that.
Found out in the
They have a lot of injuries, but I don't think Benetton. Well, do Benetton
Harry Byrne play
with Europe after 1 win from 2?
Yeah, Harry Byrne will play. So Harry Byrne obviously signed from Leinster. He'll play because Bristol literally don't have any fly halves on their books.
La Rochelle Leinster is the game of the week, I think.
Leinster will win that. La Rochelle on that team.
But La Rochelle in Europe in the 2 games they've played this season have looked like that team. That's the thing.
Yeah, who do they play?
I think there could be they could have, I'm not going to say last dance because it's the biggest cliche in sport the last 5 years, but there's an element to them of like, let's get the 3rd title. I think last year really disappointed
Bath
them.
in the pissing rain and Bristol at home.
Yeah, but still, like, I don't know. I have a soft spot for them, obviously, but I'm gonna go with Leinster, but I would not be surprised if La Rochelle surprised people, because ultimately, it's for people in my neck of the woods, anytime Leinster don't win a game, it's a big surprise, even if they were playing 2015 All Blacks. But La Rochelle are not that, as you said, so they're not as the team to be scared of.
It'll be the 101st game with a sellout as well, won't it? They reached 100 games yesterday with that Toulouse.
I wonder how long that's going to go on for.
Because their stadium is too small.
Yeah.
Well,
I think, by the way, I'm backing Benetton to beat Bristol's. Toulon Harlequins, that will be a good game. Unfortunately, we're not talking about it. Cheetahs Zebre, my goodness, in Amsterdam.
We'll go Zebre. Fuck it. Why not?
Yeah, go
Cheetahs
Zebre.
will probably win, but we'll go Zebre.
Yeah. Dragons Po. Dragons, why not?
Dragons. And the big game of the week, Exeter Chiefs women's against Bristol Bears women, for the reason we all know, the Alona Mara effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think that brings us neatly to the end of the podcast. So thank you, the Rugby BC. Shout out the Rugby A. And we don't know when we'll be back because we don't tend to cover European fixtures. If we do come back next week, we'll do something a bit different, I think. We're not going to cover all those games. It'll take forever.
21 games, it's too many.
But we'll be back at least the week after that. So cheers, everybody. Like, subscribe, comment, and we'll speak to you next time.
Sloan.
See ya.